Welcome back to Trauma to Soul. This is part 2 of Love Addiction. We talk about narcissistic needs, self-soothing, validating from the outside in versus the inside out. We're going to pick it up right where we left off from part 1. So sit back and enjoy. Children have narcissistic needs. Children need to be everything. And when those narcissistic needs weren't met at all, we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to find somebody else to fill them. We're never taught that we should be filling them ourselves. Some people with their family, they're waiting for an apology. They're waiting to feel loved. They're constantly waiting on this validation. If you don't get it by a certain point, when you're an infant and a toddler, you're never going to get it from outside yourself. It'll be temporary, and you're going to constantly need that fix. But eventually, you got to put the brakes on and go, well, I need to heal this. I need to find self-love. And then your relationships become more because you're actually coming with something instead of the two people feeding off of that fantasy.
Oh, it's so funny that you say that, because I remember doing the program and I got to step 8, which was amends. So
That's
you have to make amends for all the terrible shit you've done. And it's awful. And I remember thinking to myself the whole time, now I'm sitting there with my list and I'm like, right, I was really fucking awful to this person. I was really fucking awful to this person. I did this. And I had this long list of people that I needed to make amends to. And I'm not taking away from the responsibility that I had to do that. But at the same time, I went to a group meeting and I was sitting, and they funnily enough, divinely timed enough, they were talking about step 8. And I was like, oh, rad, like, that's my step. That's my jam. They started talking about it, and it was this really, it was this older woman who is very intelligent, very wise, very well spoken. And she made the point of saying, you want to do amends, you want forgiveness from other people, but your starting point is forgiveness for yourself.
Right.
And I remember it hitting me so hard in the feels, because I was like, how can I expect others to forgive me if I cannot forgive myself? If I cannot sit with my past mistakes and my past fuck-ups and not view myself as broken and damaged, and actually sit there and go, okay, it's okay. It's okay that you did that shit. You did what you needed to because you learned to be that way.
Right.
And now it's about unlearning. And that's what it was for me. It was that stage of forgiveness is key, because I see a lot of people comment, and a lot of people are like, I've forgiven people and I've forgiven this one and this one's forgiven me. And I'm like, but have you forgiven yourself?
Right.
And that's where it comes from. That's the crux of it. That's the core of amends. Forgive yourself.
So like if it's almost like the parts of us that we can't own, that we don't find lovable, and the parts of us that we can't forgive is what we try to find in other people to love those parts of us so we can learn how to love it through them.
Exactly. If they accept me, if they love me, if they forgive me, then I'm worthy.
Right.
Then I'm worthy of all those things. Meanwhile, our subconscious is saying, you're broken, you're damaged, you're not worthy.
Right. So the complete polar opposites. I'm a worthless piece of shit, but I'm in love with this woman. She's in love with me. So it's now taking all of that worthlessness away. And then when she goes away, all that worthlessness comes back. Exactly.
Because you are using other people. You're using love as a crutch.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it is. And I hate, I wrote it in my article recently. I said, I hate to bring up childhood because everybody's got a story.
Right.
Everybody's got a story. Mom and dad were assholes. Something happened. And it's not something I want to harp on about, but It is where you find the answer.
You do find the answers. You do find the patterns. That primary core source relationship, whatever kind of parent it was.
Yeah.
It's almost like, for me, so if I'm in a relationship or I'm dating now, When I get
Yeah.
that thing starts in my head where I'm playing that game of not losing the fantasy, are we still connected? Is it more intense? Is it less intense? It's been 5 hours. I haven't heard anything. Do I reach out? If I reach out, am I too needy? What's she going to think? Is that going to push her away? Yada, yada, yada. Like I could barely sleep when I'm in a relationship, right?
Constant. Yeah. No, it's terrible because you realize when it's happening. I mean, I remember being gaslighted, and I know that a lot of people love that term, and they love, like, narcissists, people love that term. It's very trending, I get it. But I went into a relationship with someone who made me doubt my own sanity. And because I hadn't adequately resolved my own issues, I took it in, and I was like, well, maybe I am crazy. Maybe my intuition is wrong. Maybe I'm making shit up. And I had to realize, I had to get to that low rock bottom point where that person then leaves. And I'm like, well, there goes my entire world. And now I'm left in the rubble of my own emotions. It cannot be that way. It cannot be somebody else validating your existence. And it's sad because there's so many people out there who have such bad parental relationships. Their mother didn't love them enough. Their dad didn't love them enough. It's this constant cycle, and until you become aware of it and realize, okay, hold on, I'm actually trying to get the love I should have gotten from this person, and you can only give that to yourself. You can only love yourself.
Exactly. We are trying to fill a hole, a need that should have been met by 18 months.
Exactly.
We don't have logical thought. We know emotions when we're that young, but there's no logical thought. So then we run around acting out this scene our entire life, trying to get our needs met. And, the big turnaround for me was one day I was sitting around, I said, what am I doing? I cannot be on Tinder at 60. Like, you have to stop this craziness. It is the same. Yeah. I don't care who you put in the mix. It was all the same.
Exactly.
And so mapping it back to the relationship with the source figure, I didn't feel loved. Didn't feel like I was getting love. I felt like I was worth less than their time. You go on and on with all the ways you didn't feel like you were worth anything. And then I would sit and kind of in my mind figure out a way to be lovable. Yeah. To be accepted. What can I do? What can I say? How can I be? And I would try to mold myself into what this person wanted, this perfect image that they had of what a son should be. And in essence, I've kind of done that my whole life. I've never really lived. I've just tried to manufacture an image that was acceptable to every human on the planet. I mean, it's fucking exhausting.
It is exhausting. That's exactly what I was just thinking. Because there's no longevity to that. You can't sustain that. So I've done it myself. I'm perfect, I'm independent, I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm a mom, I'm like a super mom, all of that stuff. But people don't see you on the bad days when your kids are irritating the shit out of you. They don't see you when you're at work and you get crapped on about something, or they don't see that side of you because you don't let them. And then that in essence is also a defense. So you can't see those bad things about me because then you won't think I'm worthy of loving. And that's not a natural relationship.
It's not. And part of it is, you put on this persona and this false self. It's also to keep those other people from seeing the crap sides of you, but it's also for you to keep yourself from seeing that. Because
exactly,
I'm over here going, I started a business before I was a teenager. And then it was like, well, look what I'm doing. I feel worthless over here, but I'm a go-getter over here. That was all out of shame. So
of course
you create all of this false self. And when, if I'm going out on a date, obviously I'm going to try to look my best and act my best. And, I end up and it's wrong, but I end up feeling out the other person before I am me to see what's acceptable. And that's a shitty way to go through life. allowing, and it gets back to when you were saying about amends, allowing ourselves to see ourselves, to see our patterns, to see, what we think is the ugliness in us, and grieving that, and, and feeling that, and then forgiving ourselves. See, if I forgive that part of me, if I'm out on a date, I don't have to hide it.
Exactly.
I mean, my whole thing is, I say this jokingly, but it was like when you're on a date, it's kind of like you're a sky cap at an airport. You're bringing in all of this luggage on a cart. She's bringing all of hers in, and I'm going, we may be getting along really good right here, but how does our baggage get along?
Exactly.
And if you could start to take care of your baggage and own it and grieve it, and make amends to yourself for abandoning yourself to get crumbs of love.
Oh, I love that.
Then
I love that in a heart-wrenching way.
You deserve the meal, not the crumbs. But
exactly.
We settled for the crumbs because crumbs is all we had gotten. And to get crumbs for me, anything more than that, I'm like, oh my God, I have value here. So I'm going to gravitate towards this.
Exactly. I won the lottery. But the point is,
I can retire now.
Exactly. You're not really a winner. So it's so important to understand that stuff. I mean, I once went to a psychologist who said, because my daughter was having some emotional problems, and we went to go and check it out. And he said to me, your mother is who your daughter will become, and her mother is who she'll become, and her father is somebody she will try and enter into a relationship with. And I thought it was so interesting, because that's why I try and advocate for a good, healthy, ex relationship, because it's important for the kids. But I think, when I was growing up, my mother was constantly talking shit about my father. My father was constantly talking shit about my mother. And then that develops within you, because you think, well, my dad thinks my mom is like quite a bitch, and she's, like she's this and she's that. She's like all things under the sun. So that I must be that way. I must, and then you go, and I spent years chasing unavailable men who had no idea what an emotion was.
Right.
Or how to handle it, or, and that was more of a challenge for me, because I was like, okay, well, I'm chasing my father's love. I'm chasing his acceptance.
Right.
If I can get this right, I'm saved.
Right.
Wow. Can you talk about denial?
Right. And that's it. If I can get this Cracker Jack to love me, then I am healed.
Then I am worthy.
It's interesting that you say that. Like my mother always had this thing, all men are fucking stupid. You can't do anything, I grew up with men are stupid. Like I internalized that, and I've owned that. And that's, so you start to battle. So you would gravitate towards women who think you're intelligent.
Yes.
To try to fix that. And then what you do is you try to keep that facade up where I can't let them see that I'm not smart, because that breaks the whole fantasy.
And triggers you, because I think like when it comes to intelligence and stupidity, I think a lot of us struggle with that just normally. You don't want to come across as an idiot. And I've realized for me, like I've been like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to start the conversation with, listen, this is probably going to be a really fucking stupid question, but can you help me out here? Like, can you listen, and can you maybe give me some direction? Like, I've learned that I would rather ask something than not know the answer, and it is about being vulnerable in that space.
Yes. And that's vulnerability is ridiculously difficult in so many areas. But I would sit there. See, this is where it's not good, because you would say, let me just ask this ridiculous question. I would sit there and shake your head and go, yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yes.
And then for the next month, I'm Googling shit, trying to figure out what I just agreed to.
No, well, thank God for Google, because I mean, some of the time I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can just Google this. But it is like, that's why I love Brene Brown, because Brene Brown talks consistently about vulnerability, and people with a high self-worth have no problem being vulnerable. They see themselves inherently as worthy, themselves.
Right.
It's not based on their parents, on their relationships, on their friendships. It comes from them. And that's what sets people apart. So, you know, when you see someone who's really successful, and I'm not talking financially, I'm talking emotionally, you know, they have their shit together, their life is cool, they're very chilled, they've got a good relationship. It's because they're coming from that space of worth themselves. If the relationship ends, yes, there's heartache, there's pain, understandably, but they know that their worth doesn't emanate from someone else. It emanates from within them.
And that's where you have to go. You have to go to your self-worthlessness.
Yes.
To be vulnerable.
That horrible place.
I know. Is that a word? You have to get to that place where you don't feel you have any worth or value, and get in there and live in there and examine it and feel it and process it so that you can undo what you emotionally learned as a child.
To protect yourself.
To protect yourself and to realize that you do have self-worth. And the image that you took on of somebody else by the way you felt, by the way they acted, is not accurate.
Yeah.
You know, people can tell me all day positive things. It is never, ever going to change one bit inside of me unless I go there and I start believing it. And that comes back to the love addiction, right? If you got somebody that's telling you all the time how great they think you are, or you can feel it, I don't have to do any work anymore. This is great. I'm off the hook. I'm going to put my feet up and, you know, I don't have to
let's get onto this train wreck, of course.
Okay, that's the end of part 2. We ended on a laugh, which is always good. We'll be back next week with part 3. I will link our Instagram accounts and Mandy's Love Addiction article in the show notes. If you're enjoying the show, we'd appreciate it if you can give us a review on iTunes, and look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.